seat. Can you state your name?
Brooke Elizabeth Ice.
All right. And Ms. Ice, how are you employed?
I am a firefighter paramedic with Cherokee County Fire and Emergency Services.
All right. And how long have you been in that capacity?
8 years, a couple of days ago.
All right. And I want to get a little bit of information from you just to sort of background purposes for the jury about when somebody makes a 911 call and fire and rescue comes out, what that response looks like in terms of ambulances or fire trucks, and what's your role in that?
Okay, so what comes out to a medical call is what you're asking? Typically on every medical call in Cherokee County, a fire engine, some people call it a fire truck, and an ambulance come out together. We're combination department, so some days I'm on the ambulance, some days I'm on the fire engine. So every medical call gets a fire engine and an ambulance, sometimes even more if there's multiple patients or it's a wreck or something like that.
Okay. So you may potentially be on either the fire engine or the ambulance, depending
Yes, depends on the day.
Okay. And I want to talk to you specifically about December the 8th of 2020. Do you recall a response to 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard here in Canton?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell me what information you received and when in terms of the need to respond.
I'm not clear on the time. I remember it was in the afternoon, and we have an app on our phone that allows us to get calls. So an app notified us and said that a person stabbed had come out at this address, and it gives us a direct Google address in order to go to it. And on our way there, we have a laptop in the engine. It's called a mobile data terminal, or MDT as we call it. And it updates with information as the 911 call taker is talking to the person who called 911. And I distinctly remember my officer turning back and telling us that a female had left the scene, an adult female had left the scene. So he turned around and told all of us that, and that Canton PD was asking for us to come in immediately. Sometimes we stage, depends on the call, but if a cop determines that it's unsafe for us to be on the scene, they will ask for us to what's called stage. And that just means we stage a mile away from the scene. But on this call, we didn't stage at all. They asked for us to come in.
Okay. And if they ask for you to come in and not stage, is that sort of an indicator that's more
usually means there's a life-threatening, like something that they can't handle, and that's why they need medical assistance, typically.
All right. So on this particular day, were you on an engine or in an ambulance?
I was riding backwards. I was the third person on an engine 3.
All right. And who was with you on your engine?
Max Post was driving that day, and then Sergeant Morgan at the time was riding in the front, and I was in the back.
Okay. And was there more from Cherokee Fire and Rescue than just your engine that responded?
Yes. At the time, we were going through some different mapping distinctions within territories. So this address is at the edge of our territory and the edge of the downtown Canton station, Station 16. So neither of us knew which one needed to go, so both fire engines went. And then our typical ambulances that would have responded normally were not in service. So we had more ambulances coming from farther away because the 2 ambulances that were supposed to go weren't there. So ended up being 2 engines on this scene and 2 ambulances eventually.
Okay.
But initially it was just 1 ambulance.
All right. And in terms of you said you were riding backwards on one of the engines. How did you, in responding to this call, assign each person a role, or what was your role?
So the driver is obviously worried about managing, getting around cop cars. The officer is setting up, like talking to 911. And then my job was to get ready to get the medical equipment and then get out of the truck as quickly as possible to go and render aid.
Okay.
So that was my role.
So when you're the, what did you call it,
backwards or extra firefighter.
When you're the backwards rider in that situation, did you know that you were going to take lead?
Yes.
Once you arrived on scene?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do when you got there? Were you the first engine to arrive?
Yes, we were.
Okay. And what happened when you got there?
I got out of the truck and went up the driveway, and I met with a man in a driveway who was smoking a cigarette. I remember that distinctly. And he just stated to me, it's upstairs, down the hall to the left.
Okay.
And that's when I entered the house.
Do you know who that man was?
No.
Okay. And he said upstairs, down the hall, and to the left?
Mm-hmm.
And where did you proceed at that time?
Went into the house. The stairwell to the hallway was in the living room. Went upstairs. There was another man in the hallway, and I pushed past him to get to the end of on the left in the hallway, and then that's when I went in, and there were 2 officers in there that I could see, and then the infant.
Okay. When you entered the room, did you know that there were 2 people in need of aid? Okay. And when you learned that, how did that impact the needs?
So we only had 1 ambulance going at that time, because between dispatch and us, there was must have been a miscommunication of we didn't know how many patients there were on scene. So until going into the room, we only had 1 ambulance coming. And so how that changed is I clearly realized that we were needing more resources, so we needed another ambulance. So we had to call for another ambulance, which was even further away, to come and help us with this second patient.
And in terms of the individuals in the room needing aid, what did you observe about them?
So the first thing I noticed was Canton police officer was doing CPR on the infant. I believe that at the time I thought I saw her take her last breath. Could have been from doing CPR. When you do CPR, it does make the body move, especially with infants. And then as I was going around the corner and kneeling, I noticed the adult and that there was a good amount of bleeding around on the floor. And then I believe the police officer told me that she was also injured. So I was trying to figure out what was going on, told the Canton police officer, I handed him a trauma dressing, and then told to just apply pressure to the adult, and then we kind of had to figure out what to do with the infant.
Okay. And did you primarily shift your attention to rendering aid to the infant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you take over immediately after the Canton officer that was doing CPR?
Not immediately. Another firefighter from the Engine 16 got in there with me. And then he picked up the baby. I was doing CPR, and then what happened next was another man tried to enter the room, and firefighter Dobson and I, who was the firefighter off Engine 16, felt that the scene had gotten too unsafe for us as firefighters. So we decided to remove the infant from the room and from the house in order to try to get to the ambulance.
Okay. And was that feeling based upon like too many people being there and you not knowing who they were, or?
We didn't know the full extent of who was who, so to me it felt like we were in danger.
Okay. Did you at any time become aware of the presence of any type of weapon?
No, I was told later that by my driver of the engine, Max Post, that I was about to kneel on a knife, and I didn't know this. I was too busy trying to give instructions to the police officer, so he moved it.
Okay.
I didn't know about that at all.
Okay. And that was Max Post, one of your
Max
engine
Post.
riders?
He was on the engine with me that day.
Okay. And did you kneel down beside the bed to render aid?
I kneeled by the adult patient,
Okay.
like right next to her.
Okay. And how long were you in the room with all the parties before you all scooped up the baby and left?
I don't know. Maybe it felt like a long time, but I'd guess not less than 5 minutes.
Okay. And who transported the baby to the ambulance?
Myself, firefighter Dobson, and then we met an ambulance called Squad 5, and they barely got out of the truck. The driver never got out of his seat, and then the paramedic got out, and he got into the ambulance with us. We carried the baby down to the end of the driveway.
Okay. And who was lead in terms of caring for Hannah at that time?
It depends. We were kind of co-sharing it. Hines is as the primary lead paramedic on the ambulance. He's primarily in charge. But I had given him the story, so in my report I just stated that I transferred care to him, and then we both kind of took lead.
Okay. Were you with her present in the ambulance?
Yes.
For transport?
Yes.
After you left the room, the jury's seen some of the body cam where you all responded and picked up the baby and left, but can you tell them sort of what life-saving measures or aid that you rendered to Hannah en route to the hospital?
We applied pressure to the neck, but she was stopped bleeding at that point, so we were just put like small 4x4s on her neck, and then we did CPR, and we put her on pads, cardiac pads, in order to kind of see her rhythm, which was asystole. And asystole just means it's like a flat line, so there was no electrical activity going on in her heart.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the extent we did, because it's a very short drive from the address to Northside Cherokee.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question. You were taking her to Northside Cherokee?
Yes.
What was the decision to take her to Northside Cherokee versus like Kennestone or one of the other hospitals?
Kennestone probably would have been about 20 minutes, and when you're in a cardiac arrest situation where you need like a secure airway, typically we're told in our protocols in order to go to the nearest hospital, so a doctor can try to secure an airway or possibly get the patient back much quicker than it would be to go all the way to Kennestone and then for those interventions to happen.
Okay. Did you all, for the duration of the ride, continue CPR
Yes.
or chest compressions? Who was doing that?
Dobson was, and then I would alternate with him.
Okay. And what does that look like on an infant?
Typically, you either can use two hands and use the thumb encircling, or you use two fingers. I use two fingers, and then you're just continuously
Okay.
pumping on her chest.
And so you said yourself and Dobson were
Mm-hmm.
swapping off doing
Mm-hmm.
that for her. And how long was that drive from 215 to Northside Cherokee?
It's probably running lights and sirens. It's a 3 minute. I mean, it's not very far. 3-4 minute drive.
Okay. And did you enter the hospital
Yes.
when you arrived? And what happened at that point?
So they put us into a small room instead of the bigger rooms that are meant for cardiac arrest. They put us into like a small patient room, and it got pretty crowded in there. We continued CPR and helped them while they were getting things set up, because we had to tell them they had a very short notice to know that it was coming in.
Okay. You indicated, that CPR was being done when you entered the room, and that continued until you handed her off to the ER staff.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of your medical training and experience, do you have any appreciation for when you believe that Hannah was deceased?
I believe Hannah was deceased by the time we left the house.
Okay.
Yeah. And
why do you not discontinue your life-saving efforts even when you feel that that's the case?
we want to try to give our absolute best, and with any patient, doesn't matter. We want to absolutely try to give them their best shot and get them to definitive care.
Okay. And then in terms of the handoff to ER staff, what was your role in that?
I didn't give the report. I was in there when we were kind of like jumping off of each other, because I was the only one on the ambulance besides Dobson that had been in the house. I was the first one, so they were asking me questions of like, did you see what did this? What's the wound to the neck? And was mostly they asked if she had any rhythm, if she was breathing on her own and stuff like that. And she was not breathing on her own. She was in a systole, and then the wound had stopped bleeding at that point.
Okay. And what does the wound stop bleeding mean?
It just means there's no more blood. Like within an infant's body, there's not a whole lot of blood in general. So she probably bled out by the time we got out of the house.
Okay. All right. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Ethelwedding.
Good afternoon. You indicated that the call that you had received, the information was that it was only one individual that you initially thought you were responding to?
That's correct.
Okay. And that you didn't know that there was a second patient, I think is what you called her, until you arrived on scene?
Not until I got into the room.
Okay. And at that point, I think it was a partner or something also began assisting with the care of that patient, and you went straight to Hannah?
Yes, the police officer was actually helping us out because he was the nearest one to the adult patient. And then after I left, I assumed that my partners came in. And
Okay. When you were working on your patient, Hannah, did you happen to notice whether or not Miss Driver and Hannah's hands were together, or did you make any observations about that?
no.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, nothing further.
Any reason to keep the witness?
Yeah, she may be excused.
You can be excused. Thank you, ma'am. Excuse me. Call your next witness, please.
Tom Priest, Your Honor. Tom Priest.